Hi, this is Shane, and I'm going to give you a very quick introduction to Flourish. Flourish is a new tool we are developing to fit inside PebblePad, the single-page application. And here I am on the home page of that single-page application. From here, the learner would choose to go to Pebble Plus, Atlas, or as I said, this new tool called Flourish. Now, rather than just launch straight into Flourish and start talking about it, it'd probably be worthwhile telling you a little bit about the background of this particular tool. So let's pop over here and let's give you an introduction to Flourish. So what Flourish is what we're calling a guided development space. So a bit of PebblePad where a user gets support from a tutor, mentor, supervisor, or anybody who has a role in their progression and achievement. So it's kind of looking after their whole pathway in an institutional context. So typically the relationship will be one-to-one, so a tutor and their student, a research supervisor and their research student. It could of course be someone like a coach and the person they're coaching, but it is meant to be around small groups. In the case of a research student, it may be a research student with 3 or 4 people wrapped around them as part of their support package. And of course, tutors themselves may well have multiple students associated with them. When a user accesses Flourish, they see a timeline that shows them all of the things that have been happening. So grades from multiple assignments and feedback, and indeed from multiple systems. And it should allow them to, and their tutor, to see how they are progressing overall. PebblePad, as we all know, is the personal learning assessment system. So this is ready to indicate where Flourish fits into the piece. We've got the personal learning space, we've got the assessment system, and so we've got Flourish, this guided learning space. In terms of the sort of things that happen in here, the Pebble Plus is of course very private, user-owned, user-controlled. Learning that takes place anywhere can get recorded in Pebble Plus. Atlas is much more the space where assessment takes place. It's very much owned and controlled by the organisation. And records of assessments remain in the system, so that obviously for things like quality assurance processes. In Flourish, there's sort of shared privacy. The work in there, the grades and feedback, is only seen by the learner, to whom the grades and feedback refer, and the mentor or mentors, tutor or tutors, who are associated with that student. And these are tutors in terms of personal tutors, not module tutors. So these are people who have a much more personal relationship with the student than you would typically find on a course. Although of course there's overlap, because on programs, particularly vocational programs, someone may be fulfilling that role. They may be teaching the student as well as having a sort of academic pastoral role in their overall progression and achievement. So items in there are typically co-owned. There's sort of co-control. The purpose of the tool is to support overall progression and achievement, and it remains as an institutional record. Any assets, that is templates that users create through Flourish, of course live in their Pebble Plus account, but a record of them remains in Flourish for the institution to be able to assure itself that the learners had sufficient support during their program. And much of this stuff you'll know. In PebblePad you can create things, share things, collaborate. In Atlas there's a whole pile of tools to support assessment. In Flourish what we're looking at is the ability to track progress, see all feedback and all grades, to hold conversations over time, arrange meetings, reflect on grades and feedback in their entirety, if you like. What sort of patterns can we see emerging from this feedback? What can you tell me about the grades? Plan for this tutorial meeting, that kind of thing. And generally to be supported, guided or mentored. Okay, so let's pop back to Flourish, and this is my timeline here as a learner. The screen is split into a third and two-thirds. In the left-hand third, I've got indications of what's coming up in the next few days, and this itself is editable by the learner, and what's been happening in the last few days. And what in effect this does is to filter the timeline to just those particular items. So I had one comment, there's a record of a meeting. You'll see over in the timeline of this meeting is showing me the filter. I can just get rid of that and it will show me everything on my timeline. Or I can choose my own filters here. So show me everything that relates to feedback. And you'll see here this hand symbol indicates that I've actually highlighted this particular item. And the reason I've highlighted it is because I want to chat with my supervisor at my next meeting. So highlighting is an option available to users. If I go to this item here, I can just highlight it, leave a comment, a reason why I'm highlighting it, and refer back to that in the future. And of course I can use this to indicate all of my highlighted items. So the reason people might highlight items is simply because they may have a tutorial meeting or a supervisory meeting every 3 months or once a semester, and it's a way of just kind of pinning a little flag on something to say, I'd like to go back to this and do something about it. What I'd like to show you now is a task. So let's just I'm on all of my feedback. So what I want to do is look at a task that's been set for me. And this example is a transfer to the final year. This is a task that's been set by my tutor, related to my overall progression and achievement. In this case, it's moving to the final year. And attached to this task are 2 templates that I have to complete. Of course, these could be, in fact, this one is preparing for my tutorial. Because I've already opened it and started it, it's marked as in progress. I can change that to completed. Let's mark this one here. Actually, I can't. I need to open it, and that will automatically move to in progress. But I can mark that one as complete. I can see who it was created by, and the progress of the whole task. So that's both of these items and my ability to link additional items is in progress, not yet completed. So where does that task originate from? What we need to do is move from my Flourish across to my tutor's Flourish. Now it looks much the same. The tutor has their own timeline and has their own alerts to what's been going on. But also what they have is access to the various groups they're looking after. So this is John's group. It's a portfolio research group. There's another person in here who has the role of research supervisor, and these are the 2 students. And looking across the piece of work, we can see that Emily's highlighted a piece of work, has no alerts, and has been not very active. Whereas Shane has highlight 2 flagged items. Now, flagged items are those that have been marked by the tutor for further consideration or attention. No alerts yet, and has been pretty active on his timeline. I'll just talk very briefly about alerts. Because the person responsible for my progression and achievement, in this case Aaron, may not teach me on any modules, and because the people who teach me on various modules or courses or units, however you refer to them, won't necessarily have access to my Flourish timeline, alerts are a means of other people bringing my tutor to, or bringing items to the attention of my tutor. So for example, in Atlas, we may be marking a piece of work. We may identify that it maybe looks like it's plagiarized, or the student hasn't met expectations, and it's a way of just flagging something up and it appearing in the student's profile here. Now I can go view Shane's timeline as his tutor, and it looks much the same as I was looking at it in my own timeline. I can have a quick look for flagged only items, and there they both are. If I open this one here, the flag here says, oh, Shane's first day, worthy of discussion in the tutorial. And that's the purpose of those flags. Much the same as highlights, but flags can only be added by the tutor. Now, what I'm going to do is go back to my tutor role here, and I want to look at task management. You'll remember that I had my students creating a task which was transferred to the final year, and if I click on that, this will show me the progression. Now, you have to excuse the fact that the reporting isn't working properly on this demonstration version at the moment, but we've got an infographic which demonstrates what's going on there, the number of recipients who've started or in progress. And if I expand this, what we'd also normally see is all of the students who had this particular task and their individual progress against it. And that allows me to see at a glance how well a whole group of users are working. So what I'd like to do now is show you how that task is built up. So I'm going to go to create a task, and this is the format of a task. I should perhaps say a little more about tasks. Tasks allow you to build some sort of, if you like, learning design. You can tell students to do a number of things, a number of linked things, set deadlines around those tasks. You can aggregate tasks into larger events called milestones, and indeed you can aggregate milestones into pathways. So in the context of something like research supervision, what you might do is design a 3-year research pathway that has perhaps 6 major milestones along it, and add to those milestones particular tasks associated with supervisory meetings, various stages of the research itself, completion of various aspects of paperwork, development of researcher competencies, and they can be mapped out in advance on that pathway, and that pathway will alert the user to various deadlines, and all of that is reportable on. So we can look at a glance and see how everybody who is on that pathway is doing on their particular tasks. Now that pathway makes itself evident, if you like, on the user's timeline, although that's not the only thing that appears on the timeline. The timeline shows all sorts of other things that are happening beyond Flourish. So let's just create a random task a moment. Let's call it tutorial number 3. Prior to the tutorial, I'm just going to pause that. So having given a description of what the learner has to do, I can then add supporting items. So I'm saying they have to complete 2 attached templates. So I'll add those items. This list here is giving me a list of all the templates that belong to me. So I'm going to add the tutorial preparation plan and the semester 1 feedback review. That's what I want the learner to be able to create. And actually I can move those around because that's the most important item as far as I'm concerned. And then I can also allow them to attach their own assets to this task. So because I've asked the learner to link their personal development portfolio, they can do that. I want this all done by the 21st of December. Obviously I can set a time as well, and I can either save it and distribute it later or distribute it now. And if I distribute it, I can choose who it goes to from the students that I'm responsible for, and I can always get a report on the progress of this by going to my task management section. So just to remind you, if I track back to my timeline and look at a task, this is what it looks like for me. It tells me what I have to do, shows me the 2 templates that are required. They each have progression statuses on them, and the overall task has a progression status too. So there's a brief overview of Flourish. It's based primarily upon this timeline that tells students and people responsible for them what's been happening. So let's have a quick look at all of my grades, for example, see how well I'm doing. Let's have a look at all of my feedback to see if there are any patterns in that. But it also tells me about what's coming up. So if I've got particular tasks, let's get rid of that. I've got to do a submission of my literature review, and I've got a progression meeting coming up as well. I'll get notifications about this through email and on my PebblePad dashboard or homepage. And indeed, my teacher can send other notifications and alerts through the system. And as a tutor, I can look at my students and get an overview of their overall activity and any issues of concern, and I can view their timelines to see what's going on. I can engage in a conversation with them over time, and where there's something much more formal in place, I can create tasks, milestones and pathways, distribute them to my learners, and go back to look at those particular tasks and see how any of a group of learners are working against those. As I say, at the moment you can't see individuals, but typically you'd see a whole list of people who are working on this particular task, and their individual progress would show in progress bars at the bottom of here. So that's the brief overview of Flourish concluded. I hope that makes sense to people watching this video, and of course, as we do more work on this, we'll post further updates. Thank you.